Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today I'm going to get started on welding the exhaust for the Mark IV. I've already done a couple videos about welding and what my plans are for this exhaust, but my stainless headers order that I mentioned in the exhaust video has finally arrived. So that is all of these items here. I got my two oval to round transitions down at the bottom, and then a 2-foot stick of oval tubing, and then those two bags are full of pie cuts. So I finally got all the pieces. Now it's just time to stick them all together. But before I get to welding all the nice clean stuff, we have to chop a flange off of this and get it all prepped to put a V-band on it. So as you can see, this is the cat section off of the original exhaust. It's crusty to say the least. I'm probably going to use this end because it's cleaner than what that is. So we'll chop that flange off, get it all prepped up for welding, and that'll be the first job that we do. Bandsaw cutting never leaves like a perfectly straight cut, so as you can see, I've put the V-band flange onto this, and you can see the light coming through it. If I rotate it, it's butted perfectly up against it. So now we got to clean this up on the belt sander. I'm just going to mark the line of like where my high spot is, where it starts basically, and try and even all this down somehow. So going to take a bit, but it's better to clean it up now than try and weld that gap. And there we go. It's not perfect. I kind of went actually too far, but I tried to creep up on it a little bit, but it'll work. So now we gotta wire wheel the whole outside of this so that it's clean to actually weld to. We're all cleaned up now. Wire wheeled all of that area, wire wheeled inside as well so I didn't get any contamination on the backside. Then I went the extra mile and wire wheeled this whole section off. That way I had a good contact surface to my plate, so I had a good ground. And now we're going to see how well this welds and try it out. got the V-band all welded up to the catalytic converter. So pretty happy with how my welds turned out for just picking up the torch and going for it. I mean, you saw how little I did of testing. I basically welded like 2 inches of steel with this welder and then just went, all right, let's see if I can weld a V-band onto this old corroded pipe. So overall, definitely happy with it. There's a few spots that are a little shaky, and it took a little adjusting, getting used to like having this V-band right against like where I'd want to put my torch normally. But overall, like, they're good solid welds. You can see I got all this penetration on the backside, so I don't have any concerns about, you know, these welds falling apart by any means. So overall, super stoked with how that turned out, and now got to keep on going on, get the rest of the mid pipe done, and then we can start getting to the fun of some of these bends over top of the rear axle. We're all ready to weld up the rest of the mid pipe, so what I'm doing is I'm just welding a V-band onto the end of this 4-foot section of stainless. So I got it all set up already, and we're gonna get to welding real quick. Well, there we are, finished product. Got the whole V-band welded on. So now with this V-band on and the other one that I did previously, this pipe can go underneath the car, and then I can mark the distance of how far it needs to be cut. That way we can put another V-band on the opposite end of this, and then from there I'll be able to mark this tube where the O2 sensor hole needs to go, as well as mark where the exhaust hangers, the rods, need to be welded onto the side of this. But overall, like, really stoked with how this came out. My welds got better than the first time, which, you know, improvement is always good. Still got some spots that are a little odd, or some spots that I had to go over twice, but not too bad. And you can see the heat mark on the inside of the tube, so got good penetration through there without going all the way through the material and sugaring the backside of it. So really happy with this. Now I'm going to wait for this piece to cool down a little bit, and then I'm going to take that V-band off and then put this underneath the car so I can mark the ends, and then we can continue on making this one whole piece and finish the mid-pipe portion of this exhaust. One thing to note with V-bands, and I didn't really go through this when I started welding, there is a male and a female side. So as you can see, this side has a lip and this side has an indent. So like for this V-band, obviously, like, I didn't use the portion that I already welded to, so you got to be careful with which with how you're doing this, like I used a spare flange half to do this, so I had it clamped together and it wouldn't warp weird. But if you're gonna do that like that, you need to pay attention to which one you're welding where. That way you don't end up with like two male sides facing each other and you're gonna have issues. So just a quick thing to note, something that I didn't realize when I was going through this and almost screwed up, so I thought I might want to tell everybody else. I had a thought while I was waiting for this to cool down that actually instead of putting it underneath the car, I can mark it based off of the old pipe. So I laid the flange where I cut it, you know, roughly in the center of where the V-band is now, and then laid the rest of the piping down and then made a mark. I'm still going to put this underneath the car to double check that that lines up how I expect it to, because I'd hate to assume and then be proven wrong later. But if you'll notice, I marked like an inch or two ahead of where this clamp was on, or flange was on the original exhaust. That's because if you can notice, this turns, you know, 75-ish degrees almost immediately. And I'd rather not have to weld pie cuts directly to a V-band flange. So my thought process is, if I move the V-band up a little bit, I can weld, you know, 2 or 3 inches of just straight pipe to the V-band and then go into welding pie cuts from there. So I'm going to put the camera down for a bit and climb under the car and double check that this fits how I expect it to fit, and then we'll come back with me chopping this off. Got the tubing cut. As you can see, I've said that the bandsaw doesn't make a great cut, but I think this is a good way of showing that. So you can see how crooked that is if I can, you know, hold still a little bit. But this is after it's been cleaned up. So you can tell that it's pretty flat. I mean, as close to 90 as I can get, or really care to get. I could sit here all day and keep sanding this to get rid of, you know, every little bit of the wedge that the bandsaw puts into this when I cut it, but it's exhaust work. It doesn't matter that much, because as soon as I weld it, it's going to warp in whatever direction it feels like warping. So now we're going to put a V-band on the end of this, and then we can call this video done, because the mid pipe will be done, which will be awesome. Let's get welding. she's all welded up. I'm going to give it a few minutes to cool down still, and then I'm going to toss it underneath the car. And I think for the first time, I'll bring you guys along with me, and you can see the finished product. The only thing left to do for this is drill a hole for the O2 sensor. And I need to buy some exhaust hangers as well and weld them on, but I gotta, let me move into the light here. Got a little carried away with the heat in some spots. You can see it started to sugar. There's one really bad spot somewhere in here. There it is. Ooh. So, not the best thing in the world, but not the worst. It'll be fine. I mean, the exhaust gases will blow that out, and it'll be good to roll down the road for several years. So I'm not super concerned about it. It's just kind of ugly on the inside of the tube, unfortunately. But anyways, yeah, we'll let this cool down and get it underneath the car and show you the mid-pipe section that I've now completed. Got the mid-pipe back in the car. Fits great. So super stoked at how this turned out. I got to get a gasket for this joint because I don't have a spare exhaust gasket laying around, and I just loosely bolted this back together. But overall, like, fits perfectly. I got a chunk of wood holding the long stainless tube section up because I don't have exhaust hangers, so I got to fix that. But I just wanted to keep some of the weight off the flex pipe while it was sitting in here. The only thing that is a little questionable is that gap. So the flex pipe that is part of the downpipe in this car has been on this car for 8 years. So it's probably kind of sat into a position, and you know, it's conformed to how the old exhaust fit. So hopefully I can work some magic to put this more centered in the tunnel, you know, more like this, so I have clearance. But we'll tackle that when we get there. Next steps are getting the exhaust snaked through here and then up and over the rear axle. That's gonna wrap it up for this video. If you like what you saw, there'll be plenty more coming. I gotta do the rest of this exhaust on the Mark IV, so next episode will definitely be the next section of the exhaust, going up and over the rear beam before getting to the muffler. So look forward to that. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you like these videos, there'll be plenty more coming beyond just the Mark IV exhaust. There's projects for the Mark II Jetta, as well as projects that I want to get done on the Mark I Rabbit pickup truck. So this style of content won't be going away anytime soon by any means, but super pumped to get a third of the exhaust done on this car and get one step closer to getting this car ready to go to Tail of the Dragon. So thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, and we'll see you next time.